If you grew up in the 80s and 90s like I did, you witnessed some of the greatest R-rated movies ever made. It was a heyday of legendary action stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, both of which were seen blowing dudes away wholesale on the big screen and the small screen on a regular basis. It was also the golden age of schlocky, gooey, B-movie filmmaking by the likes of Lloyd Kaufman and Troma Entertainment. The era of movies from the early 80s to the mid-90s was just a smorgasbord of blood, bullets, and boobs, and subversive filmmaking was the pinnacle of entertainment for kids on a Friday night after your parents went to bed, or if you spent the weekend at the house of a friend whose parents were way more lax about the rules. It was also, weirdly enough, a big source of entertainment for us kids that following Saturday morning, in the form of cartoons. Yeah, I grew up in an age where film studios frequently repackaged incredibly violent and inappropriate material into cartoons for kids and threw it out into the world hoping to make a quick buck. Welcome aboard Space Castle, where our continuing mission is to explore all things nerdy in the universe. I'm your Captain DT, and I can't tell you how many weekends I spent staying up late to catch terrible, wonderful, depraved, brain-rotting R-rated films on cable, only to turn around and watch their Saturday morning cartoon counterparts the very next day. The first of which is a film that needs no introduction.
But you're gonna do it anyway.
But I'm gonna introduce it anyway. Directed by master of satire and black humor Paul Verhoeven and released in July of 1987, Robocop took the world by storm. The story of a Detroit police officer who is horribly mangled and tortured by gangsters during a bust, who in turn shoot him to death. This cop, Alex Murphy, is then rebuilt by the corrupted evil corporation that now owns the police department into Robocop, a brutal and draconian blunt object to uphold corporate law and protect capitalist interests. Material that is absolutely perfect for a children's cartoon. And allegedly, the highest rated scene in Robocop as shown to test audiences in 1987 was the scene where a gangster named Emil Antonowski is doused with toxic chemicals, then hit with a car and explodes into a spray of goo. This was the scene that movie test audiences loved the most. The movie was a smash success, is heralded as being one of the best science fiction and action movies of the 80s or any other decade, and there was no goddamn way that money was going to be left on the table. It's no wonder that a year later, in 1988, a cartoon series produced by Marvel Entertainment Group and animated by Acom Productions was unleashed onto the world. Obviously, it was toned down from the incredibly violent original movie.
A bloody fortune!
This is the police. We have you surrounded. Come out with your hands up.
Benny, what are we gonna do?
Keep your shirt on. I'll take care of the cops. Kiss my big toe, copper.
But as you can see, it still maintains that hard edge. Like, holy crap, I thought Detroit in the early 2000s was rough, but future Detroit in the animated series of Robocop is all kinds of up. Alex Murphy is still murdered and rebuilt by OCP in the cartoon series, who are frequently in debate as to whether or not Murphy is the best tool for the job, or if variations of larger, less complex robots are more cost-effective and useful. Laser guns feature just as much as bullet guns. Dudes still get shot, but it's more like they're being stunned Star Wars style and are frequently picked up and carried off to jail by Robocop after he's blasted them. What's interesting is the fact that the show still contains some of the biting satire of the original film. Early in the first episode, we see an OCP robot called Ed 260 being tested as a traffic controller in a busy intersection.
Proceed.
Will you look at that? What'll they think of next?
You have made an illegal turn.
A car makes an illegal U-turn, and Ed 260's limited programming causes it to open fire on the car with machine guns and rockets, and then open fire on all other cars and people in the area for minor parking violations.
Without signaling is a violation.
This is just a few minutes into the first episode of a cartoon for children, and innocent civilians are being f***ing murdered by a corporate robot gone awry. Despite being manufactured for kids, the Robocop animated series really didn't pull its punches. There's an episode that deals with gang wars that erupt when a large amount of weapons are stolen from the cops. There's an episode where Robocop has to protect a Middle Eastern prince when terrorists try to assassinate him after an attempt at a peace treaty. There's even an episode where Robocop tracks down and faces Clarence Boddicker, the gangster who murdered him in both the TV show and the movie, and Robocop has to relive the psychological trauma of being murdered, and he has to decide between revenge or the law. The show actually kind of kicks ass. Unfortunately, it only lasted 12 episodes. Most animated series at the time went for at least 13 episodes as a test run, but Marvel Entertainment Group decided to use the budget for the 13th episode of Robocop to instead create a pilot episode for X-Men: Pride of the X-Men. That infamous X-Men cartoon where Wolverine is Australian for some reason.
Hold it! The kid stays here. She'll just get in the way.
I will not.
Don't worry about us, Dingo. We'll make sure we can.
Now that show ended up going nowhere and was canceled after the pilot was produced. Marvel Entertainment Group was bought by New World Pictures, who canceled all of Marvel Entertainment's animated projects aside from Muppet Babies. Pride of the X-Men did end up becoming the basis for Konami's now legendary X-Men arcade game though. So, we lost a pretty epic Robocop cartoon series, but we gained one of the best arcade games ever made. Was the trade-off worth it? That's for you to decide. Yes. Yes, it was. The Robocop animated series is not streaming anywhere, and I'm not sure if it was ever released on DVD. There's copies available for it on sale on Amazon and Etsy, but I can't vouch for their legitimacy. You can, however, watch the entire 12-episode run here on YouTube. Robocop is a weird candidate for children's programming and merchandise, but it also honestly kind of made sense. Kids love robots, and producing all kinds of action figures and toy guns and eventually shoot-'em-up video games made a lot of sense. But the next R-rated movie that got turned into a kids' cartoon makes much less sense, on the surface. Now, most people's first experience with the infamous and beloved Troma Entertainment is probably The Toxic Avenger. Troma Entertainment, created by Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz in the 70s, is a very low-budget film production house that has become well-known and has maintained a cult following for 50 years now by creating B-movies intended to shock and play to counterculture audiences. The films are widely known for being very violent, disgusting, and sexual in their content, and also just being a lot of fun. And we have Troma Entertainment to thank for the careers of such people as James Gunn, Vincent D'Onofrio, J.J. Abrams, Samuel L. Jackson, and even Oliver Stone, just to name a few, who all got early starts in their career either in front of or behind the camera on Troma flicks. The Toxic Avenger, released directly to VHS and Betamax in 1986, tells the story of Melvin, a skinny, incredibly socially awkward janitor for a neighborhood gym who is constantly bullied and harassed by a group of psychotic gym rats.
Okay, not really seeing cartoon material here yet, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, but when I say psychotic, I mean like, these gym patrons spend their evenings running down pedestrians and bicyclists in their car, brutally murdering them for kicks, and then taking Polaroids as souvenirs.
This is fun! Oh, these are great!
Wait, what the f***?
One particular prank these nutjobs pull on our hero Melvin has him shrinking into an anxiety attack in which he jumps out of a second-story window and into barrels of toxic waste.
What the f***?
And that toxic waste is on the flatbed of a truck parked in front of the gym because the drivers stopped to consume an entire Ziploc freezer bag of cocaine.
Alright, now I see how it makes sense as a children's cartoon.
Our hero Melvin is submerged in the toxic waste, which then causes him to catch fire. He then somehow manages to get home and dunk himself into a bath at home, but the damage is done. He mutates into a muscular 7-foot-tall monstrosity that would make Sloth from Goonies uncomfortable, and is imbued with an all-new level of eloquence and also the desire to destroy all evil. And he does so by violently and gruesomely murdering any criminals who cross his path. Okay, so obviously, again, the source material had to be toned down in order to work as a cartoon for kids. But here's the thing. After some reworking, removing the graphic violence, the depraved sexuality, and all of these socially incorrect jokes and content, like Toxic Avenger's girlfriend being a clumsy and ditzy blind woman, the show Okay, hang on. This is actually going to blow your mind, so let's take a brief interlude to prepare you mentally. The premise actually made pretty great sense for a cartoon in the 90s. Like the 90s specifically, it would not have worked in any other era. But it ended up being the perfect time and place for such a thing. You see, by the time the cartoon premiered in 1990, kids were totally into mildly subversive and gross stuff in their cartoons. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were still all the rage, with the first live-action movie having come out that March. The action figure line for that franchise was filled with all kinds of weird stuff like Mutagen Man, who was a barely held-together mass of limbs and organs contained in a life support tank, or the Turtles having weapons made from dead animals and stuff. Like, for real, like here's an action figure I have of Raphael where his weapon is made from a dead blowfish. And the comics were absolutely bonkers too. Swamp Thing was a DC Comics character that ended up with his own movie in 1982, directed by Wes Craven of Nightmare on Elm Street fame, no less, and ended up with a children's cartoon the same year as Toxic Avenger. The 90s were buck wild, and turning the Toxic Avenger into a more visually palatable character, making him a hero who protected the Earth from pollution, and giving him a cast of supporting characters that made for fun action figures, just made sense at the time. And just to cement things, the animated series, dubbed Toxic Crusaders because Avengers was deemed too harsh, was written by Chuck Lorre, produced by Walt Kubiak, and executive produced by Fred Wolf, the exact same team that had made Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a massive success with their cartoon, and the same animation studio was employed to crank the show out, giving it a very similar look and feel to the Turtles, making a transition for kids smooth and familiar. And finally, Playmates, the company that was enjoying ridiculous success with Ninja Turtles action figures, was tapped to create a toy line for Toxic Crusaders. It was all very much engineered to try and recapture and mimic the success of the Turtles, while also piggybacking on popularity of stuff like Captain Planet. Back when Americans actually cared about the environment and people didn't believe that deforestation, global warming, and depleting the ozone layer were all hoaxes.
My heart.
The show is actually pretty good. The subversiveness lends itself to a certain charm, and the writing is clever and self-aware.
Uh-oh. I'm getting that weird feeling again. Something evil is happening, and it's happening real close.
Help! Bad guys are gonna destroy our orphanage so they can build a poisonous chemical plant!
Where could that evil be? Huh? Hey! Bad guys are trying to destroy that orphanage. That's not right.
When Chuck Lorre is at his best, he's a pretty great writer, but, you know, sometimes he gets lazy. Sadly, this show also only lasted for 13 episodes and was not renewed for any more. There is a lot of discussion as to why the show was never picked up for more episodes, and a strong consensus is that the market was just oversaturated for such things at the time. Plenty of shows in the early 90s cut from the same cloth only ever made it to 13 episodes, despite popularity and successful merchandising. Like, take Bucky O'Hare for example, that's one that comes to mind, and one that I really loved as a kid. I had all the action figures, and I still have my original Bucky to this day. The show was weird, it was fun and inventive, but there were just so many shows like it at the time, and kids' attention spans just couldn't stretch that far. Lloyd Kaufman, however, the creator of Toxic Avenger, tells a different story, believing that conspiracy and orchestrated efforts to kill the cartoon came into play, and he was left with a series that was too short to go into syndication and untold amounts of money that were left on the table. The story is that Troma Entertainment ended up suing New Line Cinema for $50 million in damages over a live-action movie adaptation of Toxic Crusaders. The lawsuit states that New Line purchased the rights to Toxic Crusaders and was contracted to produce, market, and distribute a live-action film. They failed to do so, canceling the film as soon as a script was ordered. Lloyd Kaufman believes that New Line purchased the rights and halted production of the movie to deliberately stop it from competing with the sequels to their own smash hit, 1990's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. No one knows for sure, but the case was settled out of court with an undisclosed sum being paid out to Troma Entertainment. Yeah.
This cartoon show should have gone into syndication, and I would have become a very rich man. Toxie was well on his way to becoming a household word, and we were going to have all this great merchandise to shill. And then the evil men from the big corporations came, and they took Toxie away. Can you say devil-worshipping international media conglomerate?
Lloyd Kaufman, you're the best of us.
Well, kids, it's time for Uncle Lloydie to go and cash his welfare check. Bye, kids.
Troma was actually able to release Toxic Crusaders on DVD in the 2000s, and you can watch the full series online for free on Tubi, along with the original live-action movie. And yeah, you can find the very short-lived action figure line on the secondhand market for absolutely insane prices. And now we're going to go back to where it all began, the very first instance of an R-rated film being adapted into a cartoon for kids. The year was 1986, and America's favorite action star was a Vietnam veteran by the name of John Rambo. Now, the first Rambo movie came out 4 years prior in 1982, and I know what you're thinking. How in the world would you get a cartoon out of the story of a Vietnam veteran battling PTSD, launching his own all-out war against the local police department of a small town because their abusive treatment of him caused him to lapse back into survival mode as a Green Beret? Right, and most of the world and the production studio who created the inevitable cartoon were all thinking that same thing. The answer is, you don't. However, they made a sequel to First Blood in 1985. Actually, they made a lot of sequels to First Blood and they ended up with all diminishing returns, but First Blood 2 was a radically different film from the original. As one of the Galactonaut patrons in our Discord very succinctly put it while discussing the research for this episode, in the mid-1980s, there was a sudden wave of films that shifted from dealing with the emotional and psychological toll that the Vietnam War took on America, and instead started focusing on a need to sort of go back and win this time, so to speak. In First Blood Part 2, written by Sylvester Stallone and James freaking Cameron, yes, that James Cameron, is exactly that. Gone is the PTSD angle of the original film, and instead, John Rambo goes back to Vietnam to rescue POWs and fly helicopters and fall in love and kill a whole lot of Viet Cong and Russian soldiers along the way. In just 2 films, the series had gone from exploring the horrors and lasting effects of war to full-blown war fantasy.
And that's how you get a cartoon series.
Exactly. First Blood Part 2 set the stage for Rambo, The Force of Freedom, wherein John Rambo is not an introspective and quiet soldier suffering in silence, but instead a loud, boisterous, globe-trotting American warrior joined by a diverse group of special agents who all have their own visually clear shtick and sets of abilities. Turbo Hayes is a former race car driver. Touchdown Jackson used to be a football player and still wears his jersey into battle. You get the idea. And they all face off against a terrorist organization with a catchy name, Savage. And if all of this sounds exactly like G.I. Joe, it's because they just ripped off G.I. Joe. Rambo even has a ninja friend whose brother is an evil ninja who works for the bad guys, just like Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. G.I. Joe was already a huge hit franchise at this point. Sylvester Stallone was a household name, and Rambo First Blood Part 2 was a record-setting box office success. It was a no-brainer to turn it into a toned-down action cartoon and merchandise the ever-living hell out of it. And so Rambo, The Force of Freedom is a wildly over-the-top, fiercely patriotic cartoon about defeating the forces of evil and preserving democracy. The show is one-liner and inspirational comment after one-liner and inspirational comment.
I want you to go into Tierra Libre and kick the general out of there.
It'll be my pleasure, sir.
If they grab you, there'll be nothing we can do. Our government's not officially involved in this.
Well, I am.
And Rambo does the absolutely most ridiculous stunts, like this. $15 million was dropped into the production of the series, which started as a 5-part miniseries and was successful enough that it was then picked up for an additional 60 episodes. It was not, however, picked up for a second season, and instead, those 65 episodes immediately went into syndication. Rambo, The Force of Freedom, which just sounds more ridiculous every time I say it, was not without controversy before its cancellation, though. Like I said before, it was the very first time an R-rated property had been adapted into a children's cartoon. Peace groups protested the show, parents complained, and even Sylvester Stallone himself was very vocal in his unhappiness with the show. The Rambo cartoon, which features Stallone's likeness and a very terrible impression of his signature drawl, left Stallone feeling very angry, resentful, and embarrassed. In a 1986 interview with Chicago Tribune, Stallone said that he was left out of the process of licensing out the Rambo franchise and had no control or say-so over how the show was sold to audiences. He said that the toy lines and merchandise directed towards kids infuriated him, that the movies are not for kids, should not be marketed towards kids, and he would not even let his own children play with Rambo toys. He felt that the cartoon missed the point and themes of Rambo entirely, and that he wasn't able to stop them from creating the cartoon, even though his likeness was used because he has no rights to the character. Since then, the Rambo franchise is basically turned into a cartoon anyway, so, you know, full circle, I guess. Rambo, the Force of Freedom. Goddamn, that has to be a pun, right? Like, they knew what they were doing. Rambo, the Force of Freedom is not currently available for streaming, but it was released on DVD in 2005 in 6 volumes for Region 1. That's the United States and Canada. You can find it for a fair price if you're looking to piss off Sylvester Stallone in some small way and complete your Rambo media collection. It's very, very average.
How did you get in here? Do you know what breaking and entering is?
And you're honestly probably better off just soaking in the nostalgia of G.I. Joe. There are tons more R-rated films and franchises that were turned into cartoons in the 80s and 90s. What are some that you remember, and what do you think about the ethics of doing so? Was it all harmless fun, or was it exploitation? Leave a comment down below and let's talk about this bizarre era in children's TV. And special thanks goes out to the Galactonauts at patreon.com/SpaceCastleShow for their contributions to the research of this episode. If you'd like to take part in discussions before an episode is written and filmed, join up today and get access to our Discord server and its very secret special rooms. These folks have done so, and this episode would not be nearly as good without them and their input. Thanks as always for checking out Space Castle, where it's our continuing mission to explore all things nerdy in the universe. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend so that you'll be ready for the next one. In the meantime, this is your Captain DT, signing off.